One. Welcome everybody to RideMSTA episode 6, and we got a fun one for you tonight. Really special episode. I think you guys are going to be really interested to see who our special guests are tonight. I've been teasing you. I'm like that. I do that. It's fun. But first, upcoming events. We got August 2nd. It's the River City Ride in Corydon, Indiana. Corydon, Indiana. Man, come on. Indiana, you're worse than Wisconsin for names sometimes. And most of ours are just vowels. Also August 2nd, Eagles Quest in Milford, Pennsylvania. Big one, 8/19 starts Flyby Week in Marietta, Ohio. That's going to be a fun one. Norm's really excited about that one, so hey, hit him up. September 6th, we got Bull Shoals Rally coming up in Theodosia, Missouri. I've been to that one before. That one is awesome. I love that rally. But, you know, all of them are great. So, September 12th, we got Double D, the Durango Days Rally in Durango, Colorado. And September 26th, the Fall Colors Rally, Lewisburg, West Virginia. Also, don't forget, the Star Rally in Curryville, Texas is coming up on October 19th, that whole week. There are raffles going on. You guys should have gotten the mails for it, for the raffle tickets. Really cool bike being given away. That No More Bike Lift. It's been a day, guys. It's been a day. But those are available for the raffle. Some really cool prizes. That GSX 8 for the bike raffle. I've ridden one of those. Super fun bike. So you could win one for just a few bucks. Why not? And it goes to a good cause. So on that note, I am done talking. I'm going to bring out our special guests in 3, 2, 1. Hello, ladies!
Hello.
Hello.
So our special guests tonight, the ladies of the MSTA. We've got Carrie, we got Amy, we got Deborah, and we got Joy. So I am going to turn the show over to them, and it is all them tonight. Have fun, guys. I'm here if you need me.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
All right. Well, I am super excited to meet my 3 new lady rider friends tonight. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
And we are really just meeting for the first time. So this is pretty cool that we are just jumping right in here with our audience. It's exciting to do this for the first time, to get some ladies of the MSTA featured to the group. And we don't know yet if this is going to become something that we do on a regular basis, or if this is going to spark some other kind of activity for the women of our club, or if it's just going to be a one-time thing. So we are appreciative of any feedback we get that helps to keep this train rolling here. And I think we're just going to jump right in with some introductions of ourselves. So I'll start us off. My name is Carrie Shagan. Some of you might know my husband, RJ, from the regular monthly podcast. He's been doing that with the guys for a little while now. I'm in Pennsylvania. Typically, we are in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. That's where we live at, and that's like the horse and buggy kind of part of the state. But tonight, we're actually coming from our hometown. So we are up in the anthracite coal region of Pennsylvania tonight. Only about 45 minutes away, but a very different riding experience, which is pretty cool to have so much variety in our state. I have 3 bikes currently. I have a little KTM Duke 390. I have a Triumph Tiger. No, that's my husband's. I have a Triumph Thruxton 900. And then I have a little Kawasaki dirt bike that I'm just starting out on. I'm new to some off-road riding recently. And RJ and I got involved in the MSTA in 2021. We found the group through Facebook, and it really kind of aligned with the kind of riding we like to do and the kind of people that we like to ride with and associate with. And we saw that the Star Rally that year was going to be in Canaan Valley, West Virginia, which was a place we had previously discovered on a road trip in our little Miata and had really wanted to get back to on 2 wheels. So it was the perfect opportunity to make that happen. So we joined the club, went to our first Star, and then have been involved since then. So I'm going to pass it along to Amy and just kind of go around the screen here. Tell us about yourself, Amy.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Amy Bullock. I live in Broomfield, Colorado, which is about midway between Denver and Boulder, if you're familiar with Colorado at all. I actually born and raised just north of there in Longmont, Colorado, so it's kind of my area for here. I ride a 1991 Honda ST 1100. I do believe it's considered one of the original sport touring bikes, kind of started everything off. So it's pretty fun to have that. I became aware of MSTA. My boyfriend found it on Facebook and he joined, and I tagged along for a while and decided not only I didn't want to just be a tag along member with him, I wanted to join myself. So I believe we joined probably in 2022, I think.
Very nice. All right, Joy, let's pass it around to you.
Yeah. So my name is Joy Melton. I'm actually from Florida. That's where we have a house. We usually are there in the winters, but we're usually gone adventuring in the summer. It's a little too hot there. So Amy, I was actually near stomping grounds of Colorado a lot
Wonderful.
this summer. So we were really exploring, having a great time with that. So I love Colorado, especially where we were in the mountains. I actually have a 2023 BMW 900XR, which used to be considered an adventure bike, but now I think they put it back in the sports bike category. So I ride that. I usually pop some off-road tires on it, some 80/20s, so I can get a little bit of experience with that. And then I'm relatively new to riding. I just started riding 4 years ago myself. I've always ridden as a passenger with my father for many, many, many years. But we got involved with like the Space Coast in Florida, the Space Coast BMW riders, and there was a joint ride with MSTA back in the spring. So that's when I first got introduced to MSTA, and that's when I signed up because it seemed to align with everything my husband and I do as far as riding and the people and the different routes. So we really wanted to get involved in that sense.
Nice. All right, Deborah.
Hi. Let's see. I live in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Born and raised. Still here. Traveled quite a bit in the States. Let's see. I have currently 15 bikes, a mix between motorcycles and scooters.
Nice.
Let's see. If I can remember what they all are, I'll start with the motorcycles. I have a 2015 Yamaha FJ09, a 2007 Suzuki Bandit 1250S, a Triumph Tiger XRX. It's a 2015, and I have a new 2022 Tiger 900 GT Pro. Also have a Triumph Bonneville T120 2018. Let's see. I have a 21 Honda NC750X. And then the last few months I've done some horse trading, and I have two Royal Enfields, a new Super Meteor 650 and the new Shotgun 650. And those are, then I've got about 8 scooters from 250cc to 530cc. So
That's awesome.
Nice. Rob is jealous of your collection. That is impressive. Anything else you want to share, Deb?
Well, not right now.
Did you share how you got involved with MSTA?
No, I didn't. I forgot. I knew there was something. I think I joined MSTA in 2017 because I went to Star in Knoxville in 18. So I think I joined in 17.
Okay.
I knew about MSTA when it was originally known as the Honda Sport Touring Association. Years and years ago, there used to be channel called Speed Vision. And there was a weekly program hosted by a guy named Dave Despain. And he did a 2-part episode on the HSTA. So I kind of knew about it from way back in the 90s. But I was involved in another organization, and I didn't know that there was anybody in Colorado until about 2017. And I was looking around for somebody that better aligned with the way I wanted to ride and stuff. So I got in touch with the Colorado folks and joined up, and that's my MSTA story.
Very nice. That's super interesting that we have 3 different ways amongst us of how we've kind of gotten into the organization. So there's lots of different avenues in for each of us, and they bring us together. I'm going to try to jump around a little bit so that we don't just keep going round robin, person to person. So Joy, you had started to talk a little bit about when you got into riding. So do you want to share a little bit about how you got into riding and say a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, like I said, one of my fondest memories of growing up with my dad was being on the back of his bike. That was one of our quality time things that we did together. So I never really thought about riding my own bike. My husband used to ride, and so I thought when we first met, I saw a motorcycle on his profile and asked him if he had a bike. He's like, "No, I sold it." So a couple, years later, he decides he wants to get back into riding motorcycles, but he really wanted me to go and take the motorcycle safety course to see if it's something I would be interested in myself. And honestly, I really wasn't. I just was just like, it seemed like too much responsibility. I'd rather just sit on the back and space out. And he's like, well, just go take it and try it out and see what you think. I think you might really like it. And, if anything ever happened to me and somebody needs to ride the bike home, then, maybe you would feel comfortable with it. And then he reminded me that I wasn't any safer on the back of his bike. And I started thinking about his driving in a car, and I was like, oh, I'm a little more conservative. So he might have a point there. He knew exactly how to get me on that one. So I took the course, and I loved it. The bike was a little difficult starting out. I understand anybody who's, new starting out, it's just a little intimidating, and the bikes aren't really the best choice when you take the course. So I think I'm on bike number 5 right now. So that's been, figuring out what bike worked for me. But it works really well. He and I ride together. He likes the safety of the two of us together. He feels like it's safer when we're staggered and we look like a car, and then having the auxiliary lights and that. So it works really well. It just works. We love, that's one of the things we love doing together is just exploring. We're both adventurous. So I really like that it helps me stay, more mindful and take everything in. And I don't know, it just seems much different when you're on the bike than in a car. Everything seems more beautiful, it's more vibrant, more colorful, and I remember more. I don't know if you guys are that way. I'm sure you are too. But that's kind of how we got started was, I wanted to get into it to ride his bike, and he's like, no, I think you need your own. So he was right. He was right. I love it. Absolutely love it. So I think I've booked about 35,000 miles in 4 years. So we've been adventuring a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. How about you, Deb? How did you get into riding?
Well, originally, I got into riding through bicycles. I've ridden bicycles ever since I was really little. And, this must have been around 1983 or something. I was about 26 or something. I had just ridden home. I still lived with my parents at the time, and we lived at the top of a very steep hill here in Cheyenne, and I was in the front yard. I just come home and I was huffing and puffing, and there was a guy on a motorcycle went up the street, just putted right along, and I went, huh. So I looked into it and took the MSF beginning rider class, decided that would be something I would be interested in, and then bought a Yamaha Virago 500, which was a little big for me at the time because I listened to other people that said, oh, you need at least a 400 or 500 cc machine so you can get out on the highway. Well, So that bike sat in 3 different garages before I sold it. because I dumped it one of the first rides and had to call a friend to help me pick it up. So I was afraid to ride by myself. So I sold that bike when I sold my first house, and I was bikeless for about 4 years. And then in 1995, I decided I wanted to get back into it, but wanted a smaller bike to start with. And my parents were retired, and they spent their summers up in Snowy Range and knew a couple of people that had these big, quote, big scooters. And they said, well, maybe you'd like something like that because they're low, seat height wise. And I said, okay. So I went up to Snowy Range one weekend and Dad introduced me to his friends, and one of them took me for a ride on it. And so when I got home, I started looking for one, and it was a Honda Helix is what the scooter was. So I bought one in 1995, and I still have that bike. It's the only bike that I still have that was like original. So I kind of got back into motorcycling with the scooter. And then a couple of years later, I was ready for a road bike. So I got a Honda Magna, which was a 750cc V4 engine performance cruiser. It could pass everything but a gas station. It was a 2.6-gallon tank, and if you kept the revs under 5,000 RPM, I could get around 50 miles to the gallon. But if you got over 5,000 RPM, then your gas mileage went down to about mid-30s. So it made touring interesting because you really had to plan your route for your gas stops. But I think I put a total of like 16,000 miles on that bike. That's how my first touring bike.
Yay.
Then things went downhill from there. I've had two Yamaha FJR 1300s, a Yamaha Tracer 900 GT, couple sport bikes, and the collection keeps changing. So
That's all right.
That's awesome.
so anyway.
I'll share a Honda Magna story when it's my turn. I have a connection to that bike. All right. Well, Amy, how did you get into riding?
Well, sorry, I think my allergies are getting me here a little bit, but I'll try to hang in here. Well, it's interesting because I still, in a lot of ways, feel relatively new to riding. But if I admit it, I think I've been doing it about 12 years now. I was around motorcycles a little bit growing up. My parents rode, brothers and sisters rode some dirt bikes, but it kind of had run its course by the time I came around. So while I was around them, it wasn't anything I ever really was interested in or even did or anything. Jump a few decades here. Grew up, got married, kids, didn't really ever considered I would think about getting on a motorcycle. And kids are basically grown and gone. And I don't even think I was looking for something to do. But a friend of mine, actually, a younger friend of mine, said that, him and his buddy were going to take a motorcycle riding course. And as a woman, I said, well, I could do that if I wanted to. And not really thinking anything would come of that. And then this guy's buddy kind of backed out on him. And I thought it'd be really good for him to take the class. So I said, I'll take it with you. Really having no intentions of ever doing anything with it. Although I do recommend, even for people on the back of motorcycles, anybody that drives a car, I think basic rider course is a must-have for anybody, just to make you aware of motorcycles and things like that. So I figured it was a good course just to get some information from, and ended up taking it. And I apparently became a motorcycle rider at some point in there. Not sure what happened. Started out pretty slow. Started out on the wrong bike, and then I got a boyfriend that had motorcycled his whole life, many different kinds of motorcycles he'd owned in that. And he actually bought my current 1991 Honda ST1100 because it was his dream bike of many years ago. He bought that, rode it for a while. Then he decided he wanted to upgrade, and he went to the Honda ST1300 and kind of was like, I think you should ride this, my old bike here for a bit. And I'm like, yeah. I was currently riding a Sportster 1200, and it was not the right bike for me. So I slowly started riding his, started to fall in love with it. The riding position was so much better for me, and I was so more better rider when I rode that bike. And I would say they kind of decided I was actually a motorcycle rider, and that was only a couple years ago, actually.
Mm-hmm.
How
did you get into riding, Carrie?
Oh, well, so I love how all of our stories are just a little bit different here. I'm a little bit similar to Joy, but I don't have that background in my life. I knew nobody who rode a motorcycle, nobody in my family, nobody in my friends. It wasn't on my radar at all. My husband and I are very opposite. I am very conservative and safety conscious and not a risk taker at all. And he likes to live on the edge and have a lot, he was a firefighter. He was an EMT. He likes that adrenaline rush. And at some point in time, he decided he wanted to ride motorcycles. And I was like, wow, okay. And he started on his own. And then, shortly after, he wanted me to get on the back. And even that was a leap for me. Like, oh my gosh, this is something that I could die doing. But I love my husband, and he's never led me down the wrong path before. I tend to say that he is my fun side and I am the responsible side, and we balance each other out really nicely. So I trusted and I took the leap, and we were having a good time riding 2-up for a while. And then I would say maybe a couple years into that, he said, you know what, I think you'd really like to get your license and try this on your own. And I, again, was like, I had no interest in that. I don't know, but I trusted, I took the leap. And we're really fortunate here in Pennsylvania. Our state offers free motorcycle safety classes, not only at the beginner level, but all the way up through the advanced level. So he had taken the MSF course when he got started, and that's how he got his license. And he said to me, I'll go with you if you want me to, and I'll take the course again because we're allowed to take it as many times as we want to. And I'll ride along with you and support you through it. So we did it. And I give so much credit to how those courses are structured, because I came in with absolutely no knowledge. Motors and vehicles do not come naturally to me. The one thing I had going in my favor was I had, prior to this, finally taught myself after 5 years how to drive our stick shift Jeep Wrangler. So I had the basic understanding of how to do the shifting under my belt, which was very helpful. But I needed to start at the beginning, and that class really does that for you. And had they tried to accelerate and go any faster, I think I would have felt like a failure and I would have been done right with that. They had a great variety of bikes where we went. It was at a Harley Davidson dealership, but I don't think if they had any Harleys in the mix, there were very few. There were 2 women taking the course, and they let us pick first what bikes we wanted. We were both on the shorter side. So I had this little Suzuki 250 Cruiser that I started on that was super cute. And, we just started by walking it across the parking lot, and I needed every step of that. Like every time they pushed us to the next level, I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm ready, but it was just the perfect timing and everything went so smoothly. So made it through the class successfully. And my husband had a Honda Magna. That was his first bike. He had since then also purchased his Triumph Tiger, and he thought he would pass the Honda Magna on to me, and that would be my bike. Oh, heck no. we took it up to a parking lot to just kind of start and get the feel of it. And I was like one of those fainting goats that you see people post on the internet. I could not bring that thing to a stop without tipping over every single time. I'm like,
Oh,
this is killing my confidence here. He's like, no, this is clearly not the right bike for you. So he went out and he got me a little Ninja 250, and it was adorable. And I loved the heck out of that bike. Never let me down. I never dropped that thing. I just had so much fun on it. And I finally started getting to a point where I wanted to go faster than the bike was really letting me go. Not that I was going crazy fast, but like I felt like I could use a little bit more power. I was ready for that. So then stepped in my what I like to call my fairy bike godfather. Man I had never met before in my life showed up when we were out to breakfast one day, and we were on our motorcycles, and he came over and he's like, I have the bike for you. And he showed me a picture, and it was my Triumph Thruxton. And it was beautiful, and it had things set up so perfectly, and it fit me just right. And I fell in love with that bike. And then that was kind of my transition into, I think I'm a rider now. This is pretty cool.
Very cool.
All right. So I think that actually segues nicely into our discussion topic of how do we choose a bike? And that has been very interesting for me, because I shared that I have this fairy bike godfather who showed up in my life at a very opportune time. His name is Lou. He is a crazy man. He rides 150 miles an hour, I think. He shows up for breakfast at this place with his crew all in their tracksuits, and he's like, come on, come on. I'm like, no, Lou, no, I can't. I'm never going to be able to ride with you, and I'm okay with that. But strangely enough, when we did a track day for the first time, I took my Thruxton out on the track, and it was so fun. I had a great time, but I was exhausted. I couldn't finish the last two sessions because I was so tired from that heavy bike. And I don't know if anybody's ever ridden a Thruxton. I don't know if the Bonneville's similar, Deb, but it leans so far over on the kickstand, and when you go to pull that thing back up, oh my gosh, it's a beast. For me anyway, for my small body. So my husband said, well, if we really like doing this track thing, maybe it's time to get you a lighter bike for on the track. And no sooner did he say that, Lou's sending him a message. Do you know anybody looking for a Duke 390? I've never really had the opportunity to go make my own mistakes, because Lou is always there, just handing me the right bike at the right time.
Wish I had one of those.
I know. We've done a few demo days over the years, and I've found a few bikes at those demo days that I really like, but I've never needed to even go down the dealership route because Lou is just always there with my bike.
Wow. That's cool.
All right. Well, why don't we pass it to Deb this time? How do you pick a bike? You've had lots of experience with that.
Oh, well, I read too many motorcycle magazines. And the reviews, and nowadays there's YouTube, and they put all these reviews on YouTube, and it's all video, and so I'm kind of a gearhead. I grew up with cars, and so anyway, if there's a bike and I think I'm interested in it, I go find one and I go look at it and I sit on it, and the next thing I know, it follows me home. So I'm a poor one to ask. I don't have anybody in my life that says, here's your next bike. I just kind of pick it myself. I decide that I get a wild hair. So when I had the Magna, I decided I needed a sport touring bike. And that's when the Yamaha FJR 1300 was first coming out in the early 2000s. I went down and looked at a BMW. What were they then? The R1100 RT? Maybe.
Maybe.
Anyway, and I didn't like that bike. It was too wide, too heavy. When I bought the Magna, a guy named Jack Ross owned the Honda Harley dealership, and he said, well, when you're looking at a bike, he said, just go sit on as many as you can and get a feel for it to see how it fits you. And he gave me all sorts of pointers on kind of what to look for, and fit was a big thing for him. You know, if it didn't feel right, you weren't going to like it, you weren't going to ride it. And he's right, but I took that going out and sitting on one a little bit too literally. So I had this wild hair, and then I found a dealership in Laramie that had a customer FJR in, and they let me sit on it. Well, they didn't have any allocations, and long story short, I ended up buying my first FJR from a dealership in Colorado. So I go all over for bikes. It's just ridiculous, and I liked that bike. I toured back to part of the West, back to Knoxville and environs, and many shorter trips on that bike. And then but in between the FJR and the Magna, those naked, what they called a naked sport bike, which is kind of a standard with a sport bike engine in it, they were coming out. So I got detained before I got the FJR, and I got a Kawasaki ZRX 1200R because it had the engine from the Ninja. What did they call it then? The something 12. Anyway, it was the sport bike's engine in this more UJM type chassis. But so then we added Yamaha FZ1 about the same time. Well, about 4 years later, because I like to go fast and I like to be comfortable. And it felt good when I sat on it. And besides that, it was silver, and it matched this silver tank bag that was at the dealership. And I really wanted that tank bag, and I wanted a bike to match. So this is how I buy bikes. Then I've bought a couple of bikes that were a little too big, but I'm like, oh, I can handle them. One of them was a 2012 Moto Guzzi Stelvio 1200 NTX, which was a lovely bike. But by the time I got it loaded, it was a little heavy and it was a little tall. And I got where I was afraid to ride it because I was afraid I would drop it. It was top heavy. So it got traded eventually when I talked myself into parting with it. And then that second FJR I had was not the best fit. It was Yamaha had redesigned the FJR, and it didn't fit me as well as my 05 did. But I bought it anyway because I was gonna like that bike. Well, I rode it back to Star in La Crosse and came home and traded it in on a V-Strom 1000 XT Adventure, which I loved, but didn't get a ride very long before I had a little freak accident and broke my knee.
No.
And at the beginning of, midway through 2020, and then I didn't feel comfortable with a tall, heavier bike with my knee. So that got traded, and then on the Honda NC750X, because I was looking for a bike with a lower seat height and a little bit lighter bike that I could handle with my bum knee. And so I'm kind of all over. When I was younger, I wanted the faster bikes. And now as I'm getting older, the taller, heavier bikes, they're not as enjoyable to ride. So I've gotten rid of those, and hence the Royal Enfields have come into my life. Because at one point I would never have looked at them, but they are a delightful bike. I still have the Tigers and for long distance trips, so I'm all right.
Nice.
So I just kind of choose a bike on a whim.
That's all right. I like your style. And it seems like you've gotten to a little bit less trading and a little bit more collecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because once you get it paid for, it doesn't really cost that much for insurance and stuff to keep it. And as you get more, you ride them each less. So, it's longer between tire changes and all that kind of stuff. And I have downsized a little bit at one time I had 17 at one time. And then I sold a bunch a couple of years ago and got down to 14. And then I bought that Triumph. It was too good of a deal to pass up. So
a true collector.
Yeah. Yeah,
Nice.
There's the collector part. Yeah.
How about you, Amy? How do you pick a bike?
Well, I alluded to that earlier that I actually didn't choose my bikes very much either, but I kind of was, the first few bikes I was kind of told that's what I was going to get. And with no history in motorcycling, much to speak of at all, I didn't even know there were different types of motorcycles, to be honest. So how to choose a motorcycle, my first advice would be do a little research and find out actually what's all available out there. In my mind, there were only cruisers or crotch rockets. So I ended up on a cruiser. I had I think it was an 05 Honda Shadow was the first bike. I actually ended up dating my motorcycle instructor. So I think that's a no-no, but we found him later. He didn't use my phone number from the class or anything, but so he found my first bike, and again, he rode cruisers, and that's just what everybody should ride. And I'm actually fairly tall, and I have a long inseam, so most bikes are not too tall for me. But again, I rode the cruiser for a while. Then I did upgrade to a Sportster, mostly because I think the Shadow was a 600, and I actually liked having more power once I test rode the Sportster 1200. I actually felt a lot safer on that bike, just having a little more power to get away or avoid anything that might come up. So I actually upgraded the power level just kind of as a safety issue at the time. But again, I never rode that bike very well. Sitting back with my feet in front of me just felt unnatural. And I had a tendency to check the front tire too much and keep my eyes down on the road right in front of my tire. And so switching to the sport touring where I couldn't even see the front tire made a big difference for me. But choosing a bike, again, I would do some research and see what's out there. I would sit on a lot of bikes. If I had it to do again, I would sit on a lot of bikes to find out what I wanted. I think for women, it's a challenge always just because of the weight of a motorcycle. Physics just say we're not as strong in the upper body as men are. And motorcycles are kind of made for men, I would say, in general. But sit on it. They don't do very many demo rides anymore. So I know it's hard to actually ride on one, but if you get a chance, ride on anybody's that you can and keep your mind open, because what might fit you might not be what you originally thought.
Great points.
Yeah.
How about you, Joy?
Yeah, so kind of like what Amy was saying, like when I, went through the course, there wasn't many places you could go do a demo ride, not to mention I was a little nervous getting on somebody else's bike, other than at the class to take it for a spin. So I believe the first place we went that, well, one of the only places that was doing demos was the Harley dealership. So we went and did that, and they put me on one of the 500 street rods. And it was easier than the bike I learned on initially in the class. So I was like, okay, well, this might work. And then I was like thinking about my dad, and I'm like, okay, he's a Harley guy, and my brother's a Harley guy, and they'll probably feel more comfortable if I'm on a Harley. So they wanted a little too much for that one, but I found a used 750 street rod that was a really good deal. So I got that initially, and it was not the right bike for me. It was a little too heavy. It was a little too intimidating. It was a little too, top heavy as well. Not long after we got it, we went to Daytona Bike Week and we're trying to do a U-turn, and I cut it just a little too sharp. Over I went, and I'm like, all these bikers like seeing me do this, I was like mortified. But the good thing was, before my husband even knew what happened, because I was behind him, somebody else had already stopped their bike, got up, come over and was like, shake it off, girl, you're okay, come on. And he like got my bike up, and he was like, really, you're okay, shake it off, get back on. I was like, okay. And it was amazing because he was so encouraging. And it still meant a lot to me that day, because I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did that. And I think that bike got dropped 2 or 3 more times. One time I was like trying to go up a hill. We were on a hill, and it starts rolling back, and it was like moving so fast, and it was a steep hill, so it was scaring me. Anyway, I really thought I shouldn't be riding. I was like, okay, I'm not cut out for this. This just isn't for me. I just need to give it up. And then my husband's like, we're getting rid of that bike. Let's find you something else. And so my second bike was a Ducati Scrambler, which was a little lighter, a little sportier. And so that one was really good to start building some of my confidence, because I think it really does depend on the bike. So we got used to that one. I was doing pretty well with that, but there wasn't cruise. There wasn't room for bags, because we started doing more like overnight trips and touring type of stuff. So the next bike I went to was the BMW 900XR, and that was between that bike or a Tiger 900. And we were looking at those specifically because both of those made a low suspension motorcycle. For me, I do, I'm like 5'2", 29 and 30 inch inseam. But I have a foot injury on my left foot from a skydiving injury. So for me, sometimes when I step on that foot, it's a little, it's not quite the best, and it like hurts, or a little pinch, and I just want to buckle. So I wanted to make sure that I felt like I had really good footing on the ground. I didn't want to be tiptoeing and then step down and have a, some kind of ache and want to just tip it over. So that works really well, the low suspension bike. So I did that for a while. And then we decided we wanted to do more off-roading. So then I got a Tiger 900, but then I was really disappointed because the 900XR does so well in the curves, and with off-road tires, it does what I need it to for the off-roading that we do. I went to the tail of the dragon, and it kept popping me back up. The Tiger did in my curves, and I was like, I just like to lean into it and just go. So I ended up selling the Tiger and going back to the 900XR. And for me, it's a great little sport bike. I think there's other ones that would be great for off-roading. But if I can only have one, which is what I'm trying to stick with right now, it does really well trying to make it work for both. But we did learn this summer, we met some friends in Colorado, some new friends, and they took us on some trails. And once I got on there, I was like, oh my gosh, the suspension on this bike is not made for, like, Cumberland Trail was one of them. And I'm like, like about to lose my, the rack on the back was falling off. And I was like, okay. And I was just thinking I was like, okay, I wonder if my husband's GS handles this a little better since it has the suspension to do that. So there may be, an adventure bike, a little more door sport in the future. But for me, I think the biggest thing is, the weight of it, feeling comfortable riding it, being able to feel like I have good ground clearance for me, because that's what I feel comfortable with. And then the maneuverability. Once I got on the 900XR, and it just makes really tight U-turns. Like, it handles a lot of conditions really, really well that I thought was me, and being a sucky rider, I really did. And then once I realized that it really depends on the bike and which bike you get that fit, is a good fit for you, then I'm like, oh, okay. Then the confidence started coming back, and I felt really good with, calling myself a motorcyclist, so that's kind of how I pick. So.
Yeah, great stuff. Joy and Amy, you both said some things that I made a lot of connections with that relate to our topic of the challenges and the joys of being a female motorcyclist. I really connected with that idea that motorcycles do kind of feel like they're still built for men, especially like I'm only 5'5", so both height and strength come into play for me a lot of the time. And Joy, you were talking about that feeling of wanting to get your feet down. And I share that feeling with you. And so I do think that is a challenge that can be specific to women, not always, because there's plenty of women who are taller or stronger than me. And there may be men who feel the same way, but maybe don't always feel comfortable. So, but yeah, I think that for me, that's one of my biggest challenges is feeling like I'm comfortable on the bike and there's not quite as many options out there. Gear too, there is women's specific motorcycle gear, but it's not as easy to just walk out and get it like it is for men. Like I can't just walk into cycle gear and pick out anything I want off the rack. Yeah. So for me, that is definitely a challenge. And also I think the image of what a woman motorcycle rider is pretty heavily influenced by the professionals that are out there, because there aren't that many of us. And so that tends to be what the common picture of a female motorcycle rider is. So like when I was wanting to get my feet down firmly, my husband's like, well, you should watch these videos of Jocelyn Snow. Well, I'm sorry. Jocelyn Snow does this for a living and gets paid for it. I already work 2 jobs and I only really get to do this on the weekends. So I am probably never going to be Jocelyn Snow, no matter how hard I want to be. So like for me, if I want to keep enjoying this with the level of professionalism I am putting into it, I want to get my feet down because I want to feel comfortable and I want to feel good about it. But on the other side, one of the joys of being a woman rider is how encouraging so many men are of women coming into the sport, at least in the sport touring sector. I don't know if it's the same across all sectors of riding. Although I will say I belonged for a little while to a Red Knights organization because of my husband being a firefighter. We were the only 2 oddballs not on Harleys in the group. And while it wasn't necessarily the club for me all the time, everybody there also was super welcoming of having women in the group. They encouraged their wives to ride. So I think that enthusiasm to have more women out there is definitely a pro. I have met some men when I'm on my Thruxton who are like, oh my God, I used to ride a Bonneville in the 60s. And if you ever get the chance, you should get out there and ride one too. They're just so amazing. And I've had a lot of guys come up and want it, like they assume that I know a lot about bikes and that I must be some kind of daredevil because I'm a woman rider. So like they come with a lot of positive thoughts about women riders, or I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not on the mechanical side of things. We can't have this conversation. I actually am the stereotype in some ways. I'm sorry. So Deborah, I'm going to pass it along to you. What are some of the challenges and the joys for you of being a female rider?
Well, some of the same that you guys have talked about. Gear. When I first got into motorcycling, there was no women's specific gear. You kind of had to make do with like a guy's stuff and try to make it fit. So what we have now is so much more than what we had when I got into it, but it's still, sometimes I get the feeling that the saying, shrink it and pink it is still what, a lot of manufacturers are doing. And it's like, hey, wait a minute, we have hips. We have a guy's jacket. So yeah, women's gear, and then every manufacturer is different. They have a different idea of what a woman's physique is. So some of them make gear for little skinny things, and hardly anybody makes anything for a real person, I think. But finding a comfortable, well-fitting, gear is still hard. And living in Cheyenne, it's
Limited selection, I'll
there,
say.
yeah, there's nowhere to really walk into it. Some of my favorite jackets I've had for eons because I went to a women's motorcycle. It was more like a conference in Loveland about 10 years ago. And there was a lady there just starting a business of making women's gear, and it was called Girls Gear, Girls with a Z or something like that. And then she went out of business shortly after that. But I tried on a jacket there and it fit perfectly. So I bought one.
Mm.
And then later I went out to her website and bought like 3 more. And those are my favorite jackets, and you can't get them anymore. I've tried like Tourmaster. I've had fairly good luck with, especially their mesh jackets and stuff. But it is really hard to find anything that fits correctly. I don't have, a problem finding a helmet, or gloves can sometimes be an issue. You have to try those on. Because sometimes with my hands, women's gloves are too small, even if I get like a large. So I go to a guy's small. I just try them on and see what fits. It's still hard to find women's gear. And for like boots and stuff, there are a lot more manufacturers that are making women's boots like TCX. But I started riding in like hiking boots, and I still prefer hiking boots. Only I once in a while I'll run into a problem with the laces if they're really long. So I've had to find a way to kind of hide those so they don't get stuck in your tail bag when you throw your leg over and you're loaded. There's nothing more embarrassing than trying to get on your bike and your foot gets stuck in your tail bag. But anyway.
A lot of good points.
Yeah, and I'm 5'6", so I'm taller than a lot of women, so I don't have as much problem, like finding a bike that fits. But it's kind of hard out there, and I'm like you. The weight of a motorcycle is more important to me. And I haven't met Jocelyn Snow in person, but I've seen her videos and stuff, and about, they're talking about this little short gal, and I'm like, I don't want to work that hard. If I have to work that hard to ride, forget it.
Good point. All right, Joy, how about you? What are your challenges and what are your joys?
I mean, I think it's the same as you guys were talking about. I did stumble upon, we were doing a trip to Alaska, so I did pony up and get some climb gear, women specific. So that has worked really well for me and does fit that, if somebody's got more of a budget, that's not always something that you can get. But being in Alaska with a lot of rain, it was really good for that. Boots wise, things that are comfortable. Like I said, I have that foot injury, but I prefer the Daytona boots that have the little wedge heel. And then the insole is cork. So they actually these boots are more comfortable than I think 95% of the shoes that I actually own. And then they give it's about a 2.5 inch incline on the heel. So it gives me a little more ground clearance, even more than what I had before. And then I kind of already talked about some of the stuff with the bike. I think the joy is kind of like you said, Carrie, people being so supportive of it, or like, we'll be traveling and like, they'll see my husband and they don't respond, but then they see me and they're like, kind of thing. And I'm like back, or seeing the little kids that are like, it's a woman, it's a girl, like, because they're just so surprised because they're so used to men being the ones riding the motorcycles. And so then they're all waving, or you see a little girl that's like, I want to do So that's kind of cool to think that maybe we can inspire another generation of females to ride motorcycles one day. And then just the experience of riding itself is it's just a joy. I just enjoy, every minute of it, everything I take in. And so even the challenges, the technical stuff, I really enjoy doing stuff that challenges my skill set. That's enjoyable to me as well. Always trying to do something, learn something new, or ride on a different terrain than I'm used to, or whatever, to see, can I do it, kind of thing.
Yeah, good stuff. And how about you, Amy?
Some of all of that. I'm giggling about the gear a little bit because I kind of have broad shoulders, so I just automatically go shop in the men's section anyway. The challenge of that is I don't get pink, and I would really like pink. But I make do. I would say my biggest initial challenge, as I was kind of setting out into this motorcycle world on my own without somebody leading me in it very much, was simply trying to find somebody to ride with. Especially as a beginner. You hear a lot of stories of women that want to want to get better riding, but they get put in challenging situations that maybe they're not ready for. And so just the fact of I wanted to ride with somebody and I couldn't find anybody. Typically, I guess, when I was looking for other women to ride with, either, nobody rode, or the ones that I did get connected with had rode all their life, and not to be stereotypical biker babes, but very hardcore and very into it. And I, a little like Carrie's, like, I really just want to go tool around on the weekends once in a while. So that was one of my initial challenges. So, interesting. My challenge now, I feel, is still similar. There is still a small percentage of women riders, so I tend to always be the only woman riding in any group I go with. And it's interesting as I listen to Carrie and Joy. Carrie sounds a little more like me on the conservative, I don't need a big adrenaline rush. And Joy sounds like, well, you skydive apparently, so I'm not doing that. So my challenge is a little bit that then the groups of men I ride with, they do want to push it and drive a little more hardcore. And whether I'm able to do it and keep up with them, it's not necessarily my joy to do that. So my challenge is just always feeling like I'm slowing them down or keeping them from enjoying the ride as they want to enjoy ride it. But keeping true to where I'm comfortable with and not overstepping and getting into trouble.
Very nice. Well, your sharing, Amy, leads us to our final question here, because that really made a perfect segue to our advice for any women who may be on the fence about getting into riding. And we were kind of chatting about this in our messaging group a little bit yesterday before we got to meet each other in person. And, I think one of the phrases that has been most influential on me, and we hear it everywhere, so it almost is a little cliche, is that phrase, ride your ride. But to expand on that, I think it's so important if you're a woman who wants to get into motorcycle riding, if you have that interest, take that plunge, know who you are, and keep working on figuring that out as you go through the journey, and then find your people and let them build up your joy and your confidence in the experience. And I say that because I was really fortunate to have some really good supportive experiences at a lot of really critical moments. So that MSF course was so perfect. I know there were people in that course who wanted to move faster, who wanted to get to the harder skills more quickly, but I needed that right from the beginning start, and they stuck to the program. They didn't push people to go faster, go harder, and I was able to be successful in that experience. That very first track day that we did, we were with a group that was more of a street riding group. It was just people we found online, similar to MSTA, that was just a group we found online and kind of hooked up with. And so a lot of those people were doing the track for the first time because they were more street riders. And the coaching that they did was geared for people who have never done this before. They were calling friends who have never done it before and encouraging them to get in on the track day and see the fun. So I wasn't the, one person there who had never done this before, who didn't have the experience, and everybody's like, oh gosh, what's she doing here? So I felt really, really supported in that environment again. There have been other times we've done additional track days since then where the coaches were really just there for the free track day and didn't have any interest in somebody who still considered themselves a beginner and took off and left me in the dust. And it was a real confidence killer. Like, I really I was like, should I be here? Do I belong here? I don't know. And I think it's very easy to get into those situations. We don't do a lot of group riding. And it's kind of interesting. Like, we've done a couple dealership rides where we went out for like dinner or just a ride around. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm better than some of these people. That feels really good. But when you get into those situations where you're, like I said, I will never ride with my fairy bike godfather, Lou, because I know he's a maniac. I know how he rides. I don't want to mix myself up in that. So I'm not even going to put myself in that position to feel like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. So I think there definitely is a right path for a lot of people. And since we took over the Pennsylvania State co-directors, my husband and I, and we've been getting to meet more people across Pennsylvania, some of the people we meet want to ride quickly, and they say that, and others will come out and say, I like to meander. And I'm like, you are my people. I'm so glad you're willing to say that, because sometimes there is a little bit of a stigma in motorcycle riding that you have to want to go fast all the time. And a lot of people do, and that's fine. That's my husband. Like, he needs that adrenaline rush. He needs that feeling of kind of hanging on the edge once in a while. And so that's his style of riding when he rides on his own or with a different group. But that's not my style of riding, and that's okay. And when we're together, he and we can find our happy compromise. But when you go out with a group, I think Norm had actually, our president had posted not too long ago some good criteria for group rides. And that was one of them. Just be honest with, this is what type of ride this is going to be. This is who this is intended for. And if that's not for you, don't join in. But there will be rides that are for you. So find those people and join those groups. How about you, Deb? What's your advice?
Well, I would say, find your people. I was lucky, I guess. When I bought the Magna, I wanted to find a group to ride with that wasn't the local hog chapter, because they'd ride from bar to bar. That's not my idea of a ride. There was a Goldwing Road Riders Association chapter here. And I found them at the mall. They used to have a show out at the mall in early May every year. And I wandered out there and talked with them and went to a few meetings. And even though the national organization was geared to couples, the man is the pilot and the wife is they called him co-pilot, passenger. Here in Cheyenne, there were some very, very nice people. They encouraged me to join and to stick around, and I did. And they were the ones that took me under their wing, so to speak, and taught me how to tour long distance and gave me that confidence that not only could I ride a motorcycle, out of town, but that eventually I could do it by myself. They were, and then they'd have weekly or monthly rides and find out, the experience level of everybody and kind of ride to the slowest rider. And there were a few times I pushed myself a little bit more, and I wrecked one time because I did that. I did not ride my own ride. But, it was the best group to learn to ride with. And like I say, it was very fortunate to find them. And since then, it's been kind of hard to find someone who likes to ride the way I do. So I ride by myself a lot, or I'll ride with a couple of friends that I know, and we all have kind of similar riding styles. So, but I would, say find your people, and sometimes, if you go into a dealership, they may know of local riding clubs or groups, or have customers that like to get together and ride, and there are different ways to find your people. So
Absolutely. How about you, Joy? What's your advice?
I think I agree with everything you guys have said so far. One of the things that was really helpful for me, I do like the idea of um, finding your tribe, or finding your people that you really fit with and you feel comfortable with when you're writing. As far as me, with initially writing, it was really helpful to find a mentor. I mean, that mentor was my husband, but I think it's great for newer writers to find somebody that they can click with, that would want to be able to help with that mentor role. And then one of the things that was really, really helpful, because I was worried about, what if they turn quick? What if he decides he's going to go here? And so the comm system, we do
Yes.
have the comms, and we communicate. And even when I first rode on the interstate, he was giving me feedback and helping, and giving me different types of positive feedback. Or we would get off at exit ramp, and he would say, okay, this is how I want you to set up, watch my line. And he still does that to this day, like, hey, watch out, there's a pothole, hey, watch out, there's this coming up, or don't go this way, go that way. And so he's always giving me some kind of feedback in that respect, so that's helping me. Or he'll give me positive praise when he sees in his mirror that I did something or handled something well. So I think having a mentor and that calm, getting that positive feedback, that was huge for me. And then just knowing, hey, we're going to make a left turn at the next light, that kind of eases some of my anxiety about, is he going to do something quickly and I'm not going to be able to get over. I think that we think about that a lot when we're, especially in group rides. Like, are we going to be able to keep up? Are they going to do something that might make me feel uncomfortable or leave me behind because I don't feel comfortable doing that maneuver? And then just feeling comfortable, like you guys have said, just if you don't feel comfortable with something, feeling comfortable telling somebody that. So a lot of times he'll say something and I'll say, you do you, I'll do me. You do you, I'll do me. Like, I'm not gonna, I'm not you. I'm not gonna do things like you want me to, or the way you expect. So just feeling comfortable, to stand up for yourself in that respect, and stick to your guns if you don't feel comfortable doing something that somebody else is doing.
Awesome points. Yeah, the comms are huge for us as well.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree with that. Amy, what's your advice?
Well, my biggest advice for somebody newly getting in would be, do not buy a bike before you take the rider course. I've heard too many stories about losing a lot of money because they bought a bike and then took the course and decided it wasn't for them. But big on basic rider course and continuing education. I had the chance to do advanced rider course last year, and it was amazing. And one of my, I guess, the biggest things that I took out of that was I had so much to learn and I had a lot to unlearn. Because basic rider course is wonderful. They start you walking on the bike and you walk out actually being able to operate a motorcycle, which is wonderful. But some of the basics they change as your experience changes as a rider. So I guess kind of know there's always classes out there to take. Also, I've heard stories of people, women in particularly, getting in a class with the wrong instructor. Mm-hmm. And I would tell people, if you're in a class and you're not feeling the instructor, I know there's many, many very good and very encouraging instructors out there, and they just need to get out and try it again. Because I've heard stories of that too, where I think maybe I've heard something where the trainer actually said, you're going to kill yourself if you get on a motorcycle or something like that. And that person walked away and never even considered it again. And I think they just had the wrong trainer. So go find your course. There's many out there. Take it as many times as you need to, and then start slow. I don't know how many miles I put on in my neighborhood when I first started riding, and I upgraded to a industrial park, and many hours and miles, literally tooling around by myself, learning as I go after I took that course, and just kept building on the skills so I could eventually become a rider.
Very nice. And those points connect so well because, you know, for some of us, our mentor was our husband, but it doesn't have to be. And that shouldn't have to keep anybody, you know, when I learned to ride the Jeep, my mentor was not my husband. He, for whatever reason, did not have the patience for that particular situation. And that was when I just had to go out and figure out for myself. But those rider courses are such a great place to also get that coaching and that mentorship. I took the advanced rider course in Pennsylvania, and the quality, the caliber of those coaches for free here in Pennsylvania was just outstanding. They flew in from California and Utah and Colorado, and they were just phenomenal. So that can definitely be another source of mentorship and confidence boosting. And I loved your point too, Amy, about how one bad experience doesn't necessarily mean they're all going to be bad. Because I had some of those experiences with people too, but luckily it wasn't the first experience. And so I knew, okay, I have felt more supported before. This just is a clash with our personalities in this particular situation.
Yeah.
Fantastic points. Man, we were, I think, a pretty swell group to put together here for having never met before. I think we rocked it, ladies.
I agree.
I agree.
Well, Amy and I know each other, so
Yes.
Okay. I didn't.
We're in the same MSTA group because it is
cool.
Colorado and Wyoming. And
yeah.
I think Arizona's
Okay.
thrown in there now, or Utah, a few states around there. So yes, we actually, we do our ride to eats. We get to hang out quite often, which is really wonderful.
Nice. I have not had any fellow lady riders on our ride to eats yet, so I'm going to have to work on that here in Pennsylvania.
We regularly have Terry as well.
Yeah, and then we got a new lady, Jen.
Okay.
That's right.
Right,
We don't
the
get to see her
Goldwing
as much as I'd like to, but
FB
yes.
or something like that. But yeah.
Yeah.
Well
it's,
done.
It's very special and to have that connection.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's a goal for us on the East Coast, I think.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anybody have any final thoughts before we close it out here?
A big thank you to Rob for getting us together and allowing
Yeah,
us
for
to
sure.
share this
Thank you, Rob.
experience.
Yes. And for leading us on the technical side, because that
Yeah.
was, I think, something that none of us had the background in to jump into. All right. Well, I guess then we're going to call it a night. Thank you to everybody who tuned in to listen to us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.